everybody. As Stella said, yeah, the last time I did one of these, I was based in Edinburgh. I think some of you already know I had to take a leave of absence from my job. I had to take care of my mum. So it was a very mixed time for me, but actually one of the highlights was really coming in to talk to all of you. It felt good actually to be in Scotland. Edinburgh is my hometown. It was nice to join from Edinburgh, but I have to say it's great to be back in Malawi. I came back permanently in the middle of June. And I've really sort of been getting my feet back under the table and feeling like I belong. And as Stella says, yeah, I'm an honorary Malawian, I hope. So it's been lovely to be in my second home. And it's great that we've got quite a positive forward-looking agenda, which is really what I wanted to talk to you about. And thank you all so much for the questions in advance. We will not probably be able to cover every single one of them. Some I will cover off in the priorities because they're priorities for you. They're also priorities for us. Others can come up in the Q&A. So let's just see how far we get to. Bear in mind, I'm on my phone. So if there's a bit of wobbling, that's what's happening. And it does mean I'm not monitoring the chat. And when we get to Q&A, I'm also not going to be able to write things down. So simple questions, please, would be really great. Yeah, so let me just kick off. Priority number one for us at the moment is ensuring macroeconomic stability. And the reason that is top priority for the UK government is that Malawi's sort of powerless economic state right now is having a huge impact on the lives of ordinary Malawians, on the cost of living. Inflation's 30% in Malawi. The government is basically sort of running out of money to buy basic commodities like fuel, emergency medicines, etc. And this is a really big challenge. The reason for it is complex and varied. It ranges from the impact of COVID pandemic, from the war in Ukraine, which has had such a huge impact on global food prices, global commodity prices, but also, frankly, it's because of unsustainable debt. So what we're really focusing on at the moment is working with Malawi to make sure that they can restructure the debt that they have and agree a deal that means that they're no longer broken by the huge payments that they have to make every month to repay that debt. Mostly that debt is to the international financial institutions, which is simple enough to agree a restructure, but also there's some bilateral debt. So what do I mean by that? I mean, it's with other countries. So with China, with India, and a couple of other small European countries, but China and India are the largest sort of other country creditors, but also to two commercial institutions, so TDB Bank and Afrexim Bank. And that's where Malawi is a bit different to other countries that are in debt distress, because it's not largely what we call sovereign debt that is driving the problem. It's commercial debt. And that makes it that bit more complicated for countries like the UK, for institutions like the IMF to really agree a sensible deal. This has been ongoing for the last year to 18 months. It's been a really top priority for us, but it's become more and more urgent as Malawi's supply of foreign currency has dwindled, but also because we're getting really, really close to agreeing a program with the IMF. That program is not going to solve all of Malawi's problems, but it will agree a path forward to macroeconomic stability. It will include a debt sustainability strategy. It will include a deal with all of these creditors, and it will bring in some much needed foreign exchange. And the hope, and this is where economics is a bit of a science, but also an art and a bit of fortune telling. Hopefully it will also settle the markets and it will start to stabilize the exchange rate and gradually leave the Malawian government with a bit more in its coffers to deal with some of its major challenges. Now, how's the UK dealing with that? We are really using our expertise here in Malawi. We're one of the biggest missions. We have a full-time economist who has really been leaning in, influencing other development partners, working closely with the World Bank and the IMF, and working closely with the government of Malawi on a range of sort of technical support around what kind of debt restructuring is needed. We are also using our position as a major shareholder at the international financial institutions to lobby and push for a really positive board decision when this IMF program does eventually make it to the board. So it's sort of all hands to the pump on this, because that's really going to be the single biggest thing that could improve life for Malawians over the near future. So the other big policy priority for us is consulting the Malawian government on a forthcoming UK white paper on international development. It's the first time for a while that we have felt like we've got the leadership in place at FCDO, and potentially increasing ODA budgets over the coming years, and a real sense that we want to regain some space as a leader in international development. And to do that, we really need to talk to our partners. So we've been focused on talking to the government of Malawi about what they would like to see from the perspective of a least developed country, what they'd like us to focus on in this white paper. And it won't really be a huge surprise to you, but it's really about refocusing on sustainable development goals and trying to achieve those. And the forthcoming UN General Assembly is a real opportunity for that. We know that that's one of the UN's focuses, and we are sending a UK delegation to the GA with a real focus on explaining how the UK is going to contribute to that. And it's also about inclusive development and leaving no one behind. Now, of course, you all know very well that achieving that in a country with the significant challenges that Malawi has is really, really tough. We've been trying to do it for years and years with, some successes and some losses. And that's because this is a really challenging context. There's lack of capacity in government systems, there are real governance problems, and there are real corruption problems. So another focus on being as patient as possible and being clear about what we can achieve and how we can achieve it, but staying the course, I think, is another really critical one. And then I think money matters, and we are hoping to see a significant increase in our ODA budgeting for 24-25, up to a ceiling of around 50 million. It's hard to be really sure at the moment because we're so buffeted by global shocks, but that's our planning assumption. And that's a significant increase. But aid alone, and this is not just about the UK, this is about the global aid landscape, aid alone is not enough to address the challenges of poor countries like Malawi. And they recognise that the UK is coming with a full offer, all of which contributes to Malawi's development. It's not just our development programmes, it's our defence cooperation, it's private sector. So many British businesses operate in Malawi already. I'd love to see more. There are some significant barriers. One of my major focuses is on trying to help the government reduce those barriers. It's also on cultural issues, and it's on sort of people-to-people links and exchanges. We have, we do not underestimate the impact that the Chevening scholarships and the Commonwealth scholarships have in terms of educating Malawians through the British system, strengthening those links. And it really gives us a sort of strong strategic partnership and friendship to help work through some of the tougher issues. Then I think third real priority would be climate. And a lot of you have asked questions about Cyclone Freddy. And had we had this conversation at the start of the year, then responding to Cyclone Freddy would have been our top priority, because at the time, that's exactly what it was. We jumped in really quickly with, first of all, a search and rescue team, and that team is currently in Morocco. So it's our team of people that sits waiting to get a request from government to step in and help. And they did a fantastic job. They actually saved lives by coming in and finding people who were sort of stranded by floodwaters. And then we also had an emergency medical team, and they helped deal with people who were injured and hurt, and left behind some kit that now the Malawian government is using. And we also really quickly pivoted our resilience program to be able to provide cash and food support to those most in need. As you've all rightly pointed out, it's not enough. It's never enough in Malawi. That's one of the problems. And we are thinking about how we change our approach a little on climate resilience, environmental management, using some of the extra ODA that we're expecting to have in future years. But again, not just about ODA. So we can definitely spend more money on climate resilience. We can definitely work with the government on environmental management. I went to Palombe myself when I got back to the country just to see what it looked like on the ground. And you can read as much as you like about the devastating impacts of the cyclone, but seeing a destroyed village firsthand, it really, really brings it home. And I was asking, the farmers who'd lost their livelihoods what they really needed. And a lot of it is, yes, we need emergency response, but it's longer term systemic issues around land management, around planting trees, preserving trees that are there, around more sustainable fuel, and basically sort of changing agricultural processes, and encouraging people to have jobs rather than being subsistence farmers. It's the needs of what has to happen are so immense. It's going to take a long time. We need to prioritize that. But just an increase in our aid programming on climate isn't sufficient. We need to be tapping into international climate finance. We need to think about mindset change. We need to really think about what the private sector can do on this. I've got British businesses desperate to do more on renewable energy, but Malawi's not an easy place to do business. So, you know, there's a big job to do there. Then I think the other thing we are focusing on, which is definitely more about aid programming, is food insecurity. And we know that the projections are that things will continue to worsen in Malawi year on year. This year, of course, Cyclone Freddy happened at the worst time. It devastated the harvest. We and the government are pretty anxious about making sure that people have enough food. Our resources are quite limited in this financial year. We are showing leadership by chairing a new World Bank Trust Fund on social protection, and we're putting a little bit of money into that. We recognise that this sector is quite fragmented in Malawi. It needs clear leadership, and we need to be ready to help the government with food and fertiliser and other kinds of inputs when they really need them. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we're also pushing at the big picture level on economic stability so that the government coffers are not as bare as they once were. But that's also another sort of major focus. So I think I'm going to stop there. I've talked about others of our programs in past meetings, but I'm sure you'll have questions on some of those things and on completely different things. So I'm going to hand back to the chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Fiona. That's a very helpful overview. I wonder if we could start, if anybody would like to come back with any questions for Fiona on these 3 points of macroeconomic stability